Good morning. And welcome to the Sunday service of the Unitarian Universalist Society of Schenectady. I am the Reverend Wendy Bartel, one of the co-ministers here. Reverend Lynn Gardner, the other co-minister, is across the street with the coming of age class this week. And if you are new this morning, it may be helpful for you to know that she, he, or they pronouns don't really fit my gender identity, which resides somewhere beyond the binary. So it is best to call me Reverend Wendy or Wendy when you're referring to me in the third person. There's no way for you to know that, so that's why I tell you. And I tell you that as well because you might assume the wrong thing. We might assume the wrong things about one another. So telling you also lets you know that in this community, we understand that biological sex and gender identity are much bigger than the little number 2, and even bigger than executive orders. And that if you understand that too, welcome. And if you're on the way to understanding that, welcome. And if you're a little confused but open-hearted about that, welcome. We're here to learn together. Most Unitarian Universalists light a chalice at the beginning of their services. When we kindle our chalice, we are saying yes. Yes to community. Yes to the opportunity to feel and think and reflect. Yes to opening to the holy or the larger love or the great mystery of life. Yes to being willing to be changed by what we experience together. We are saying yes to one another, to marking this time as sacred, as special, as time beyond time. Yes to joining our fragmented pieces into wholeness, healed by one another's company, inspired by one another's journeys. This morning we've invited Sue Burnell, who's in our choir and also the chair of our caring team and serves on the music team and is involved in a whole lot of different ways, to kindle this chalice this morning. This match fulfilling its purpose, to cast a light and ignite another. This spark illuminating our joy. This cup holding the possibilities of beloved community. This act uniting us against evil and guiding us towards justice-centered love. Thank you, Sue. And on several Sunday mornings, we read together our bond of union. And in looking at these words this week, I thought this could become kind of a mantra during the week when I'm just feeling a little overwhelmed by what's happening, and to just remind myself, love is the spirit of this church, and all of these other lines to just remind and ground us when things get all churned up. So let us speak these words together. Love is the spirit of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humanity in joy, to care for the earth in stewardship, that all may grow in harmony with the good. Thus do we covenant with one another. Thus do we covenant with one another. This morning, our opening hymn is number 1060 in the Teal hymnal supplement that may be near you. The words will also appear on the screen. UU composer Elizabeth Alexander wrote this song. She's based out of St. Paul, Minnesota. Many of us have arrived here this morning feeling lots of different things. Perhaps worry, or fear, or outrage, or concern. In just one short week, so many attempts to dehumanize so many people all at once. We may wonder, how on earth can we pause and worship? How can we sing with so much happening? What are we going to do? Well, let's sing these words and see what Elizabeth has to tell us about that. Let us rise in spirit and or in body to sing as we sing of hope and joy. Maria will play it one time through. Don't let the harmonies intimidate you. The melody rings through. So here we are, a week in. Tuesday, November 7th, 2028 is 1,380 days away. The midterms are about half that. And while that may give some of us hope, something to work towards, others of us are worrying and wondering if we'll be here tomorrow. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, AKA, or is it KKK? Immigration and Customs Enforcement, also known as ICE, on Thursday doubled their daily average of arresting undocumented persons across the country. You may have heard about the raid in Newark, New Jersey, especially because it was conducted without a warrant and included a U.S. citizen in the roundup. But according to NBC News on Thursday, ICE arrested 538 people in Seattle, San Francisco, Salt Lake City, Tucson, El Paso, San Antonio, Denver, St. Paul, St. Louis, Nashville, Birmingham, Chicago, Fort Wayne, Atlanta, Charlotte, Baltimore, Buffalo, and New York City. Well, I wondered, why those cities? Is there some kind of connection, some kind of pattern? Well, guess what all of those cities, except one, have in common? That's a reasonable guess. Many of them are. Democratic mayors, also a very good guess. Oh, interesting. Perhaps. I didn't research that, but I did find there are probably other things too, so I'm not saying that these are all the things by any stretch, but whether a state turned out red or blue for the election ultimately, each of these cities gave Vice President Kamala Harris the majority vote, except in Fort Wayne, Indiana, who happens to have a black female mayor. Guess what else they all have in common besides, except for one, rather? That their mayor is a person of color and or of Jewish descent and or a woman, except for the acting mayor of Buffalo, who is a white man of Irish descent. Coincidences? This week, several other dangerous and unconstitutional orders were issued this week, and you know most of them have in common? You do. Fear. Duh. What else? Revenge. Cruelty. White supremacy.
Terrible legal writing. They can't get good lawyers.
Terrible legal writing. They can't get good lawyers. Ignorance, I would add to that. And, you know, that's the mindset. But what I'm thinking about in this moment is skilled marketing. Terrible, but skilled. There was an executive order issued ending attempts to be guided by goals of diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace, while saying that the orders protect the civil rights of all Americans, and then connected DEI to authoritarianism. The executive order that declares that sex is binary, female and male, despite more than a decade of research that shows that chromosomes, hormones, cells, and individual circumstances easily widen the variation of X's and Y's. But the marketing message to obfuscate reality tries to connect it with the safety of women. And then they have the nerve to say that that executive order, basing federal policy on truth, is critical to scientific inquiry, public safety, morale, and trust in government itself. Don't you feel safer now? Whew. That's some serious strategy. I could not bring myself to read all of them, but I did read a few of them and agreed with your assessment. But it's a serious strategy that we cannot simply blow off. Because that strategy to market ideology that is scientifically and statistically false, but which, when repeated often enough, starts to be believed, unless we guard ourselves against it. And because it is starting to be believed, that is dangerous for lots of people in this room, in our denomination, in our community, and our nation. Dangerous. Dangerous.
As a woman, I've experienced sexist comments, microaggressions, and inequality in pay. At times, I felt physically unsafe. These were hurtful experiences. When I consider the broader perspective, though, I recognize that I'm privileged, very privileged. I'm white, cisgender, heterosexual, and a documented citizen. I've never had to face the issues facing immigrants or people who identify as LGBTQ. I'm sharing this short reflection this morning out of care and deep concern for family members, friends, acquaintances, and millions of people I've never even met before. I'm scared. I'm scared for our community. I'm scared for our country. The numbness and disbelief after the election, the questioning why and how did we get to this place again, has shifted to fear and to a sense of being lost. How can I possibly make a difference? What can I do? What can I say? And so while it's only a very small first step, I want to tell you, my community, how important you are to me. You are important to me. We need to remind ourselves that we are not alone. We have each other's back. And if you feel threatened or unsafe at this moment, know that there are people who care about you, who want to support you. And as a community, we will get through this together.
Thank you, Roz. One of the ways that we will get through this together is by paying attention, and by paying attention to what we are paying attention to, as well as learning from peoples and communities who have gotten through incredibly hard times before. Dr. King told us there are some things in our social system to which I'm proud to be maladjusted, and to which I call upon you to be maladjusted. He goes on in several different speeches to name so many things in society then, and pretty much all of them still apply now, to which we should be maladjusted, such as mob rule, segregation, discrimination, our economic system, militarism, physical violence. He said, "My friends, I call upon you to be maladjusted to all of these things, for you see, it may be that the salvation of the world lies in the hands of the maladjusted. The challenge of this hour is to be maladjusted." He concludes with, "Yes, as maladjusted as Jesus of Nazareth, who looked at the men of this generation, of his generation, and said, 'Love your enemies. Bless them that curse you. Pray for them that despitefully use you.' The world is in desperate need of such maladjustment," he continues, "and through such courageous maladjustment, we will be able to emerge from the bleak and desolate midnight of man's inhumanity to man into the bright and glittering daybreak of freedom and justice." I hear King's charge as an invitation, not just to recognize and be internally maladjusted to what is wrong, but to creatively and courageously do something about it. A Swiss sociologist and mental health practitioner, Jennifer Walter, posted some significant observations which have been being reposted by quite a number of UUs this week. Her social media shtick is, as a sociologist, I need to tell you, ... and then proceeds with whatever the post is. Earlier this week, that message is, as a sociologist, I need to tell you, your overwhelm is the goal. Your overwhelm is the goal. The copious orders and actions and raids are what Canadian author Naomi Klein calls shock doctrine. You may remember that text from the 2000s. Shock doctrine, that is using chaos and crisis to push through radical changes while people are too disoriented to effectively resist it all. This isn't just politics as usual, it's a strategic exploitation of cognitive limits. Now, the sociologist has some recommendations of what to do in this time of overwhelm that I may find helpful. She says, pick 2 or 3 key issues you deeply care about and focus your attention there. You cannot track everything. That's by design, she says. Impact comes from sustained focus, not scattered awareness. 2, let aggregators and experts, analysts we trust, do the heavy lifting of synthesis. Look for those who explain patterns, not just events. 3, remember feeling overwhelmed is the point. When we recognize this, we regain some power. We have to take breaks. We need to give ourselves some time to process, or process, depending on where you live. Remember, this is a marathon, not a sprint, as so many activists have said for years. 4, practice going slow. Wait 48 hours before reacting to new policies. The urgent clouds the important. Initial reporting often misses context. And 5, build community. Share the cognitive load. Different people track different issues. Network intelligence beats individual overload. Sounds pretty helpful. These ideas also seem to me to be like ways to be maladjusted. Instead of trying to do it all ourselves, each of us individually, we can choose a more sustainable approach, a more useful assertion of our power. And this week, we witnessed a brilliant use of one's personal, professional, and theological power to put faith into action and to resist authoritarian overreach. The Right Reverend Marianne Edgar Buddy, an Episcopal bishop at the Washington National Cathedral, used the power of the pulpit to brilliantly, respectfully, and unapologetically ask that the president remember mercy. Many of you have probably seen a version of the video. There are many out there. Maybe you've even braved going to see the critique, to hear the negative comments about this person made clearly by people who didn't see the video. But I want to break down this approach a little bit, because there are strategies that she used that allowed her to stay centered, even as she addressed power in the room, which may be useful to us in the future. First, she used direct address. She spoke to the people in the room and to anyone who has seen the video. And second, she tried to build a theological bridge. She referenced his own words that he was saved by God, but she did it with more grace, noting he said he had felt the providential hand of a loving God. And she continues the bridge building in subtlety. In the name of our God, I ask you to have mercy for the people in our country who are scared now. And third, she tried to appeal to his conscience by naming that there are gay, lesbian, and transgender children in Democratic, Republican, and interdependent families, some who fear for their lives. She named those people who work in the fields and restaurants and other vocations, and she notes they may not all have proper documentation, but the vast majority of immigrants are not criminals. Direct address, a theological bridge, and an appeal to conscience. Now, Bishop Buddy could have gone into shame mode pretty easily, calling out his racist and transphobic commentary over the years, could have attacked him for about 1,000 things. But she asked that he have mercy and reminded him and all who are listening that we extend humility, mercy, justice, compassion for the good of all people and the world. Some of the critique that has come out has been, how dare the bishop bring politics into church? My response, at least the one suitable for this position, is, I'd like to introduce you to this guy. His name is Jesus. You know, the one who challenged the Roman Empire. She called us to have mercy, just as her faith teaches her to do. It's called integrity. On Wednesday, I called the Washington National Cathedral to thank her for her wisdom and her courage, and to not apologize, for she has done nothing wrong. It was a small thing that I could manage to do that day amidst my own overwhelm of the week. And it is a small thing that any of us can do, to thank the people who are doing what is loving, what is right, what is courageous. To thank people for doing that. Because it's hard. And now she's in danger in ways she wasn't. And that is ridiculous. Last week, we asked you to imagine the world you want to live in, the world you want to exist, for it cannot come into being if we cannot imagine its existence. That's one of the reasons for being part of this congregation, for being a Unitarian Universalist. We don't just want the world to be better. We do, but we don't just want the world to be better. We want to be part of making it so. We understand that it needs to be a group effort, not guided by the ultra-rich and power-hungry or saved by heroes who might not come along. It's up to us, each of us, and all of us together, doing what we can to repair, to renew, and to build resilience to face these challenges. This Unitarian Universalist faith teaches all of us to value justice and pluralism, interdependence, generosity, equity, transformation, and all with love at the center. We need to live those values to the best of our ability every day, in small and large ways, come what may. We're going to have lots of opportunities to practice our faith. There are many people in this room and in our Zoom sanctuary who are scared for our lives. Our gender fabulousness somehow terrifying, our residency status threatened, our choices about reproductive health care limited, enshrined discrimination through removing efforts of diversity and inclusion, and so much more. Somatic healer and therapist Prentice Hemphill notes that fear is an alarm, one that we should listen to, one that tells us that something we care about is under threat and fills our bodies with the energy we need to do something about it. Sometimes that's to run and hide, other times it's to fight back. Whatever impulses we have are rooted in protecting what we love, our lives, one another, our planet. We care, and so we are afraid. In their book, What It Takes to Heal, Hemphill speaks about courage and of growing bigger than our fear. Not to conquer it or defeat it, but that we ourselves become larger than the fear, to grow around it. They said, rather than become what the fear dictated, I could feel it, and yet start to feel more. I breathed in, and my contracted chest softened. And with the space that I had created, I asked myself if I wanted to move forward. Hemphill thinks we can learn to embody courage, to harness the rush of energy that fear provides, and instead of retracting, we act. We do something risky yet purposeful. We show up for therapy and start our journey toward healing. We begin an honest conversation that we've been putting off. We move around a narrow ledge to take in an extraordinary view. When our bodies experience fear, our stress responses kick in, flooding us with hormones and impulses that help us to react. When we embody courage, feeling is our guide. We feel fear and use it, expand around it, and include it. It is reasonable for me, for you, to be afraid right now, to want to hide our identities, to live smaller so that others are more comfortable with our new names, our pronoun needs, our presentations. We need cisgender folks to be active allies, to interrupt hateful or ignorant speech, to take the Authentic Selves class if your schedule allows, to be creatively and courageously maladjusted alongside us. And the same is true for those of us with documentation to indicate our citizenry. We need to be allies, willing to protect our neighbors, our friends, our loved ones. I know it takes courage to be who we are called to be and to do what we are called to do. I also know that the world is a better place when each of us becomes the best version of ourselves, and in that version, we grow and shine and thrive together. Perhaps we might find courage in the lives and actions of those who've lived in hard times, like Fannie Lou Hamer. Fannie Lou Hamer was a key activist in the struggle for Black people to get the right to vote. She had been beaten. She had bullets spray a house she was staying at after she got fired from her job for trying to register to vote. And still, she once said, "I'm never sure anymore when I leave home whether I'll get back or not." I'm never sure anymore when I leave home whether I'll get back or not. Sometimes it seemed like to tell the truth today is to run the risk of being killed. But if I fall, I'll fall 5 feet 4 inches forward in the fight for freedom. I'm not backing off. Earlier this month, President Joe Biden awarded Fannie Lou Hamer posthumously the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Friends, the news will continue to be bad. and we will likely continue to be overwhelmed with cruelty, ignorance, greed, lies, and horrendous misuses of power. Limit your scrolling. Limit your scrolling and screen time. Learn from others who have faced horrible times. Come to church and be held, be nudged, be connected, and be loved. I close with this poem, In a Dangerous Time, by Rosemary Latola Traumer. I think of the bones of the unsung rib cage, the way they protect the heart, how bone too is living, how it constantly renews and remakes itself. I think of how ribs engage with other ribs to expand, to contract, and because they do their solid work, they allow the heart to float. This is what I want to do, to be a rib in this body of our country, to make a safe space for love. There is so much now that needs protection. I want to be that flexible, that committed to what's vital, that unwilling to yield. We can be that flexible, that committed. We can be unwilling to yield to evil, making a safe space for love. And we can breathe in to our fear, soften and grow around it, becoming bigger than that fear. And we just might find ourselves open and willing, for to be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors those who go before us. May we be lifted up to the light of change. May it be so. Amen. A women, and a all the rest of us. Let us do what is in front of us, the things that we can do. Keep asking questions and let the answers arrive. Be courageously maladjusted to that which harms life. Rise like a phoenix for another day to bring more compassion, filling our days with loving kindness. Let our song, our greatest hopes contain. May every alleluia bear a seed. Call for more mercy, to comfort the afraid, to remember the dignity of all humans, and be a good one. And may we be a rib in this body of our country to make a safe space for love.